The other day, I got a comment from Doritos and Bolorado who asked me, I'm thinking about studying French. How easy is that? And how long did it take you to get to intermediate level? Now, maybe you're wondering, why is he asking about French? Speak English with Christina is about speaking English. Of course it is, but I also speak fluent French and I love learning languages and figuring out how to help your brain learn better. Now, I'm Christina, and you're watching Speak English with Christina, the place to boost your English, boost your career and your confidence so that you can have the life you love. And today we're going to look at what it takes to reach the level in English that you want to have based on what I learned from learning French. Let's go. Let me tell you a little bit about how I got to a fluent level in French. Way back in 2003, I came to France to do a study abroad program. And I was super happy because I thought, finally, I'm going to immerse myself in the language. I'm just going to absorb the language with no problems, and I'll be fluent in no time. You know, I thought I won't need any more boring grammar lessons, no more fake, slow audio dialogues, and I wouldn't have to wait until I had someone to practice my French with because I would just be surrounded by the language. And yeah, pretty soon I got comfortable saying, typical phrases like, can I have a baguette, please? Or, I'm sorry, can you speak more slowly? My French is not very good. And I was really happy about that because I could interact with native speakers in a very real, everyday way. But I quickly realized, when I was speaking with my French friends and they were speaking normally between themselves, I just couldn't control the speed of the conversation. It felt like they were speaking so fast. I couldn't control the topics of conversation, and I just got lost really quickly. And all that confidence that I had developed in those first few weeks, it just crashed. And I was in these conversations and I just wished that real life conversations could have subtitles, like when you're watching a movie. Of course, I smiled and I laughed, ha 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 ha, and I pretended to understand, but really deep down, I just felt like, I'll never get this. I'll never to be able to just have a normal life in a different language. And I just kind of hoped that no one noticed how lost I felt. So I realized that just living in the country does not make you automatically become fluent. I realized I needed some kind of help, some kind of structure. So what did I do? I had a French friend, and fortunately, this friend had lived in England before. So he understood how hard it was to fit in a different language, to understand, to get the jokes. And so I could feel comfortable asking him to explain the jokes in the conversations when I didn't understand, to, point out the cultural references that I didn't have, the colloquial expressions. And if I had a question about something in the language, I felt comfortable asking so that I could just get the answer and learn quickly. And that's kind of how I realized that, when you want to get to a specific level, you often need someone to help you and to guide you so that you can start seeing a lot more progress a lot faster. And then after about, 3, 4, 6 months or so, I realized that I could make friends, I could have a normal life in a different language, and I even got my first job. And when I was going to that job, now it wasn't a great job. It was teaching English as a language assistant in a high school. And I realized I didn't want to teach high school students. I was so proud of myself because I was like, wow, I've gone to another country, I'm in another language, and I'm like having a normal life. And I was just kind of really proud of myself in that moment because, a few years earlier, I never would have imagined that something like that would be possible. And it's definitely possible. You can do it. Maybe your objective is not to go and to live in the country, and that's fine. But if your objective is to get to the level of English where you feel confident, where you feel comfortable, maybe where you can get a job that requires a good level of English, let me share with you some of the things that I learned about having a system in place to help you get there faster. So the first thing was about grammar. Grammar's complicated. French grammar is complicated. English grammar is complicated. I'm sure you know that. There's all of these nuances. There's things like phrasal verbs and crazy verb tenses. Just an example like past simple, present perfect simple, which one do you use? And then also the question of, well, what if I make a mistake? Is it really a problem? What do I really absolutely need to learn, and what is okay if I don't do it perfectly? And that's where it is really helpful to just have someone that you can ask your questions to and get a super clear answer. What about real vocabulary, like real everyday colloquial vocabulary? Yes. Some of it you can pick up in conversations. You're watching movies or you're having a conversation with maybe your American colleague, and you can kind of get some of the vocabulary. But often in those situations, what happens is you hear it, you understand maybe in the context, but then you forget that vocabulary. So you really need something that's more structured, that's going to give you the opportunities to pick up that vocabulary, but also some kind of structure to help you really learn that vocabulary. Practicing it in conversation, having someone to point out the most important expressions and to explain those typical colloquial expressions. Just one example. This is in a conversation in my online course, Understand Real American English. You'll hear the expression, she got something up under her contact. And I'll repeat that slower. She got something up under her contact. And you might be thinking what on earth? She got, okay, get. I don't understand what get means in this situation. Something, okay, up, under. So up and under, what? Her contact, contact someone? Huh? What? And that's just one sentence in a conversation that you would hear. And, you can Google that and maybe search for it, and maybe you'll find it, but maybe not. And if you do find it, how do you know if it's correct? How can you trust that answer? And again, that's where it comes in handy to have some kind of structure that you can trust, whether it's a course, a teacher, whatever. And of course, pronunciation. This is a big one. And here's a little secret for you. Nobody will ever correct your pronunciation in a conversation. If you're speaking with your American colleagues, for example, and you're making mistakes in your pronunciation, there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to correct you. Now, why? Because we think it's rude to correct someone's pronunciation if we can maybe try to understand them. So we'll try to understand. We might pretend that we understand, or, we might kind of politely get out of the conversation. So this is not the best way, for us Americans to manage that situation. But the reason that we do that is because, we don't want to make you feel embarrassed. We don't want to be rude by correcting your English. You've already done, made the effort to learn the language. We're not going to correct you because that's like saying you're not good enough. And that's not generally the message we want to give to someone when we're in a conversation. So people will not correct you in a conversation, in a normal everyday conversation. Just an example, I had a friend who went to live in the US for a year, and he was always pronouncing the word smashed potatoes. So it's in reality, it's mashed potatoes, but he was always saying smashed instead of mashed. And he said this for like a year in, his host family, when he went to a restaurant, maybe at the company cafeteria, and he was always saying smashed potatoes. And then one day he just noticed at the restaurant when the waiter repeated the order back and said, okay, so you want mashed potatoes. He heard it and he said, holy crap. For like 10 months, I've been saying smashed potatoes and no one has ever corrected me. And he just kind of felt like that frustration of why did no one ever correct me? Because we don't. Again, so this is where it can really be helpful to have someone who is there and whose job it is to correct you. And just from that example, the pronunciation of ED in the past simple verbs, like that's tricky. There's 3 different pronunciations, all for the same spelling. How do you know which one? You need somebody to ask. So the moral of the story here is that, if you want to get to the level of English that you want, you're going to need a structured approach. Like, it could be a course, it can be a speaking program, it could be a teacher, a coach, whatever. But having that structure is going to help you to reach your goal faster and to feel more confident about what you're learning. And also, learning with others, like we humans, we are social animals. We love having that interaction. It's more emotional, which means we learn it better and it sticks in your brain much better because you've got that emotion connected with the learning experience. Now, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What level of English do you currently have, and how did you get there? Share your best tips with us in the comments. And you'll see that the people here in the Speak English with Christina community are awesome. You'll learn so much from them. So be sure also to add your comment and also to read the comments of the other people in the community. And if this is your first time here, please go ahead and subscribe. You'll get lessons that are all about boosting your English, boosting your career, and boosting your confidence so that you can have the life that you want. All right, you guys, thank you for learning English with me, and I'll see you next time.